Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield audio podcast.
I'd like to recommend a movie to you that perhaps you've already seen. It's got its flaws, but I think it's worth seeing, and I think it's worth sort of braving the flaws and getting past the hype and seeing this movie because of some of the things it teaches us about American history and because of some of the perspectives that it takes. It's the movie called The Butler. You already, I'm sure, have heard of this and know the story. Forest Whitaker plays a character named Cecil Gaines, who is a White House butler. He's based on a true figure in American history by the name of Eugene Allen, a man who actually was an African-American White House butler for many, many decades and did in fact live through the history that the film depicts. It's based on a story written by Danny Strong. Some of you will know him from, believe it or not, Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame. The director is Lee Daniels. In fact, the film is officially called Lee Daniels the Butler for some unusual reason. It's produced by the Weinstein Company. I found this film disturbing in some of its perspectives, but overall, I think very, very helpful. We're actually living through a time now when we're seeing a lot of films and about to see more films about civil rights, about the struggles for equality for blacks, not only in the U.S., but also in Africa. There's a major film coming out about Nelson Mandela. There is a film I think is going to be fascinating called 12 Years a Slave, which is about a free black man back in our earlier history, who was then captured and taken back into slavery. All of this, of course, is going to keep this theme front and center. We've recently had the movie The Help, which, despite some of its stereotypes, was an interesting exploration from a perspective we've never really seen before in movies, despite just a few characters being sort of cliche. And there are, of course, many, many other films like this. But I thought this film had its flaws. Let me get those out of the way first. You see very, very unusual depictions of American presidents. Robin Williams, a fine actor, of course, plays a president we can barely distinguish. I talked to some people after they saw the film. They thought it was Truman. It's actually Eisenhower. You can't really tell the difference. It's very unusual. Even though fine actors play these presidents, you can't really distinguish who some of these people are, or they're caricatured. You know, Lyndon Johnson is talking to his aides from the toilet. Well, how many times could that have happened? So there's a bit of spoof, there's a bit of sarcasm, and just some very, very odd portrayals of the presidents. I thought that was a flaw. I personally had to get over the fact that Oprah was in it. I know. I'm not hating on Oprah, but I just given what I've written about her in my book on her, about what she's done religiously to this country and so on, and I've even heard that she's in a bit of a turn back towards some normality religiously, but her odd combination of faiths and the way that she has made your life, sees your life so much as the extension of your thoughts that even the bad things that happen to you are your own fault in essence. All of that just is disturbing, but I've written about all that, and I had a hard time even going to the film because she was in it, but I have to admit she did a great job. And so the movie tracks this man's life. It fictionalizes some things, obviously, but it is essentially the story of this Eugene Allen who died in 2010 and lived the history approximately in the film. What fascinates me, what really does show I think nuance in this film is that the film takes some themes that normally are treated with great reverence and seriousness, and in fact exposes them a little bit. For example, this character Cecil Gaines, a very staid, very professional, very skilled White House butler, very reserved, taught to be in the room but be there as though the room is empty, not to be a presence, which is, of course, numbing to the soul. Has a son who is an activist. He is a freedom rider. He later goes to Congress. He's a character, a persona that we know well. But there's a phase during which he's in the Black Panthers, and he brings a girl home who's got a massive afro and belches at dinner and doesn't have her underarm shaved and things like that. And the film is in essence treating at least some of the phases that the son went through in his radicalism and his activism as extremes, and not maybe poking fun at these phases, but showing the weakness of them, showing how silly it was to overthrow all convention because some convention was flawed and racist. And I think the film is courageous to do that. At the same time, Cecil Gaines himself is made to say towards the end of the film, and this is not a spoiler, I let fear dominate me, and some of what I did was motivated by fear. I think that's important. I think that's very, very important. And something you rarely hear in movies, rarely see portrayed in movies, is that Dr. King is heard to say that the skilled domestics were in their own way revolutionaries. In their own way, they were change agents because they showed those whom they served that a person in black skin could be skilled, could be capable, could be relied upon. Well, you don't usually hear that in movies, and it was certainly part of King's philosophy, and he was influenced in that by Booker T. Washington, which is not the only stream we want to consult when we consider civil rights, but it's certainly part of the overall battle for civil rights. And Dr. King embodied that, and I was proud of the film for bringing that to the fore. I think also that it's important to know that the different ways people could respond at different times during the battle for civil rights, the way people were struggling to push back against racism, but different generations responded in different ways, and they had to give each other some space. The young were going to be angrier. The older were going to be a bit more fearful of white society or more certain about the value and nobility of their roles. And so the film does a great job showing the interplay of these generational responses to racism, and also showing that some of our hero presidents were often conflicted about this kind of thing, and certainly playing civil rights as a political tool. There's no question we see straight from transcripts, by the way, Nixon in the White House talking to his aides. We have, of course, Eisenhower doing the same. We've got LBJ and right up to Reagan, all of them talking about things that many of these things are from actual transcripts, and yet we can see them uncertain, on the wrong side of South Africa, the whole apartheid issue, and certainly not sure what to do with Dr. King, not sure what to do with the movement, even to the Kennedys, who are often revered and they certainly deserve honor in the overall battle for civil rights, but they certainly dithered and hesitated and were uncertain about what to do, and this is brought forth honestly. So the film is wonderfully nuanced, and I think that's very, very important. One of the things I wish it had not done is end with Barack Obama. I know it's part of the story, and I think those of you who listen to me on a regular basis know that I've been really kind in writing and speaking about Barack Obama, despite the fact that I disagree with him on most issues of politics. But the reason is that many people, especially many whites, will turn this film off as of that moment. Now, they will have seen most of the film, but the fact is that and it's part of the man's story, that he lived all those years through all that racism and then ultimately saw a black man in the White House. That is part of the story. But to actually put a living president on the screen, making speeches, touting his own campaign slogans, it's going to turn a lot of the audience off, at least those who are Republicans or on the other side politically. And that's unfortunate, because I think this film does a great job showing some of the nuances of the civil rights movement and what a man might live through as an eyewitness in the White House from the 50s up until the time of Reagan, early 80s, in a beautiful way, in a way that we rarely see. So I want to urge you to ignore whatever biases you might have, like mine, about Oprah. Ignore the fact that the portrayals of the presidents are just ham-handed, even though they're acted out by really brilliant actors. All of them are really fine actors. And be ready to see a treatment of the civil rights movement that you haven't often seen. I think that it's a film that's worth it. I think it's valuable. You won't believe the number of stars in it, even in minor roles. Mariah Carey's on the screen for maybe 2 minutes. Other actors appear that quickly. But this is a film worth seeing. It's a film that presents some valuable history. What I cared about the most was the interplay of generations and the fact that there was a nuanced approach to all generational approaches to the battle for civil rights. Powerful, wonderful, and it also made me glad as an American that this man is part of our story.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, a frequent faith and culture commentator on CNN, Fox, and the Huffington Post. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Faith of Barack Obama, The Search for God in Guinness, Lincoln's Battle with God, and Killing Jesus. You can learn more about Stephen at mansfieldgroup.com and connect with him on Facebook and on Twitter under the name Mansfield Writes. The Stephen Mansfield podcast is produced by Isaac Darnold, who also wrote, performed, and produced the Rockin' and Rollin' podcast theme song. This is a Chartwell Literary Group production.